All right, let's get right into it. Today we're looking at a really powerful idea that suggests the whole 60-year-old model of strategic advice is, well, obsolete. We're talking about something called consulting as code, and what it means for the end of rented advice. So let's kick this off with the one question that this whole concept is built around. Just think about it for your own company. Is your strategy a line item, a recurring expense that you pay for again and again, or is it a permanent asset that you actually own, something you can build on? For decades, management consulting has run on what they call the pyramid model. You know how it works. It's heavy on labor, it moves at the speed of humans, and at the end of the day, you're really just renting someone else's intelligence. The new way, this management consulting OS, completely flips the script. It's about building a deterministic infrastructure that runs at machine speed, creating a capability that you own, not one you just borrow.
But to really get why this change is so urgent right now, we have to talk about a new kind of hidden danger that's emerged with all the modern AI hype.
And that danger has a great name, the hallucination tax. They define this as the huge and usually invisible cost that companies are paying when they base decisions on probabilistic AI, the kind that can just make stuff up, and of course, the classic problem of our own human biases.
And we're not talking about rounding errors here. This is what's so wild. The scale of this risk is just massive. In some high-stakes industries, a single logic failure, one bad recommendation from an AI, could cost a company over $22,000 every single minute. I mean, that's the kind of risk that keeps executives staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m.
So this is the absolute key. Not all AI is the same. The paper makes this brilliant distinction. On one side, you have the poet. This is your standard LLM. It's probabilistic. It's designed to predict the next word. And because of that, it's a master creating fluent, believable fiction. But on the other side, you have the actuary. This is a totally different beast. It's deterministic. It's not guessing. It's focused on detecting real-world constraints and understanding what the source calls business physics, the hard, unchangeable rules of how your company actually works.
Okay, so how do you actually build this actuary? How does it work?
Well, it all sits on top of a foundational technology that the paper calls your strategic BIOS.
So think of the strategic BIOS as your company's permanent brain, but written down in code. It's powered by these things called deterministic knowledge graphs. Now, that's a fancy term, but it just means they map out how things are actually connected. They don't guess, they know. The whole point is to finally replace guessing with knowing. It takes all that invaluable tribal knowledge, the stuff that's stuck inside the heads of your best people, and it encodes it forever.
And this leads to one of the most important principles here: strategic sovereignty. In this model, you own the knowledge graph. You own the intellectual property. The system is just the engine. The intelligence, the asset is all yours. And that means zero vendor lock-in, which is a massive departure from how things usually work.
All right, this next part is where things get really compelling, especially if you're a CFO or you sit in the C-suite. Let's talk about the economic masterstroke behind this whole thing.
It's called the accounting flip, and it's brilliant. Basically, by using a specific, totally standard accounting rule, it's ASC 350-40, you can reclassify how you account for your strategy spending. So instead of it being a recurring operating expense, or OPEX, that just hits your profits every single year, it becomes a capital expenditure, a CapEx. You are quite literally building an asset for your balance sheet.
And the impact on your financials? It's just dramatic. Take a look. That typical multi-million-dollar consulting project is a direct shot to your operating expenses, and it pulls down your profitability. But when you capitalize an implementation like this, the immediate hit to your P&L shrinks to a much, much smaller amortized cost. You're actually protecting your EBITDA right from year one.
But the long game is where it gets even crazier. This creates what they call a valuation bifurcation. See, if you're just renting advice, like a SaaS subscription, maybe you get a 10x valuation multiple. But building an owned infrastructure-grade AI asset, well, that puts you in a completely different category. We're talking about valuation multiples that can jump to 24, 35x, or even higher. You are fundamentally changing the value of your entire company.
Okay, so this all sounds amazing in theory, but does it actually work when the pressure's on? Let's run through what the paper calls the audit gauntlet, a series of real-world, high-stakes tests. First up, defense. It passed. The system had to enforce non-negotiable air-gap security rules. And it did exactly that.
It correctly rejected every single cloud-based vendor because it understood that on-premise logic was a hard, unbreakable rule.
Next, banking. It passed again. Here, it had to follow a very specific regulation, OCC SR 11-7, about model risk. So, the system blocked any opaque, black box AI, and instead went with explainable decision trees, something a human regulator could actually audit and understand. What about finding the truth in a sea of data? In healthcare, it passed. It found a critical $1.8 million margin problem that was totally hidden behind what looked like a healthy $36.5 million in revenue. It saw through the distraction to find the real problem.
And finally, let's go to the super high-speed world of high-frequency trading. It passed a huge test here. It correctly rejected a plan to migrate data centers. Now, on paper, this plan saved $8 million. Sounds like a great idea, right? Wrong. The system calculated the latency physics and realized that tiny delay would have actually cost the firm $40 million. It prevented a catastrophic financial mistake.
So, what you start to see is that all of this leads to a complete rethinking of what strategy even is. It brings us to a new reality for any modern company. There's a quote in this white paper that just nails it for me. The world did not slow down. It accelerated beyond human cognition. The whole argument is that human speed analysis, on its own, just isn't going to cut it anymore.
And that leaves us all with one final, pretty uncomfortable question to think about. In a world where your competitor's strategy is no longer a PowerPoint deck, but is a computed, owned, and appreciating asset, what is yours?